question. I don't know how many times I have to state with all sincerity what I said on the floor. One thing I can say, and I'll say this for the last, before God and man, wallahi, I never said she's a practitioner. Never.
You never said that?
I never used the word practitioner. And I think it must be made very clear. You know me, I have never denied statements I have made. Even when I make statements that people consider to be a statement that will create problems, I'll always stand by my statement. I was brought up properly, and I was brought up by my parents to be very truthful and defend every single statement I make, even if that statement is going to land me into trouble. I never use the word practitioner. Let's get something very clear. So I've heard a lot of people who have argued that if you didn't use the word practitioner, what did you say? I think the bone of contention is that someone accused me for saying that she is a practitioner of LGBTQ, and I never used that word. If the person says, okay, you use a particular word against me, then I'll be able to tell you this were the words I use. But the person says that you said I'm a practitioner of LGBTQ, and I never did. It is also important to state that the speaker, unfortunately, got everything wrong on that day. And I say this with humility. The conduct of business in Parliament is regulated by two very important things. One, the Constitution of Ghana, and two, the standing orders of Parliament. And of course, you can add best practices in Parliament. That is how business is done in Parliament. And these three important things I have mentioned do not only regulate the conduct of members of Parliament. As a matter of fact, it regulates even the conduct of the Speaker. That the Speaker cannot decide that I'm going to direct or do something in Parliament that contravenes either the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana or any provision, if you like, in the standing orders of Parliament. What happens in Parliament? If any statement is made off the mic, that statement is deemed not to be made on the floor of Parliament.
I see. So when the microphone is off and you make a statement...
Any statement, it is deemed not to be made.
You don't record it in the Hansard?
No, because the Hansard department captures that which is made on the mic. That's the first statement. So usually in Parliament, we do jab each other when our mics are off. If I press my mic on and I say anything, even if I say A, it will be captured by the Hansard department. So, but I have already stated I never use the word practitioner. That I can tell you with all sincerity. So for Ursula,
which was the basis for the reaction?
The basis of her reaction.
You said she according to her, her reaction or response to your statement, which we didn't hear because your microphone was off, was that you said she practices
I never
this.
said that. Well,
you didn't say that.
I never said that. I mean, I'm telling you that those who know me, and ask your reporters were there in the chamber. They would have told you specifically what many of us said. That word, in fact, I don't know the last time I used the word practitioner. I really don't know. I believe that it's over a year I haven't used that word, practitioner. If I used the word practitioner, trust me, I would have looked through the face and the eyes of Ursula and tell her that, yes, I used that word. I'm not a coward. I have never run away from things that I have said. That's why I have always said, what I can't say publicly, I don't say it privately. That's me. If I can't defend something, I don't say it. So I think that matter is settled. The Speaker got it completely wrong. And I can tell you, if it was Honorable Bagbin or Honorable Ursula Owusu, because of their long experience in Parliament, there was no way they were going to even give attention to this. Because they would have known clearly that if you make a statement off the mic, it is deemed not to be made on the floor of Parliament. That's the first statement. But the shocker was the vulgar with which she ranted. Now, assuming that someone makes a statement against you, which you think that statement is not accurate, Parliament is a house of records. Parliament is a house of facts. If you rise, you demand through the Speaker, the person to provide evidence why the person thinks that you are a practitioner of LGBTQ. And she went ahead and ranted. The last time I checked, my late mother never engages in that. My wife doesn't engage in that. My daughter certainly. So if she wants to have partners for what she engages in. I'm saying if she, please. I haven't said, I'm coming. What have I said? What have I said? What have I said?
You were on a path. This marks the trajectory that you are on.
What have I said? She said that I have never. You've never seen me
because she's not here. Okay, and I don't want this to be.
Okay, maybe let me rephrase my statement.
Of what
I'm
happened.
saying that
that's why I want us.
I'm saying that my family never engages in that. If anybody wants to have partners to engage in that, it certainly wouldn't be my family. It certainly wouldn't be that. And in any case, the vulgar with which she ranted for me was shocking. Now the idea that it takes you are mad. She's been using it on everybody on the floor of Parliament. Ask anybody who is a member of Parliament.
Which you don't take to heart.
Even when Dafia Mokpo was Honorable Dafia Mokpo was speaking, she was sitting there saying, "Wabodam, wabodam." Wabodam means what? You are mad. You know the reason why Honorable Dafia Mokpo and those of us didn't take offense to that. She said those things off the mic. Are you getting what I'm saying? Wabodam with the gestures. And even when people were saying blah blah, she said, "Wabodam." I mean, I don't understand you that well, but
so
I know.
If you didn't say that, then what was she reacting to? What did she hear that she was reacting to?
Only God knows. So that is why I was demanding the speaker should tell me specifically what statement or which statement he had I made. Because on that day, I made several statements. In fact, one of the statements I made, and I if you watch the video, I demanded from the speaker, I said, look, Mr. Speaker, allow every single member to contribute to the debate. When Honorable Bagbin asked that those who were in support of the LGBTQ and those who were against it should stand up, nobody stood up. Is that not the case? However, that alone will not distinguish between those who support it and those who do not. But if you give members of Parliament the opportunity to debate the matter, every single member should have a position on it. We'll be able to identify those who are indeed supporting the bill or those who are against the bill. And I'll tell you one thing. My committee traveled to one European country. I traveled with other members from the MPP. In fact, Honorable Andiapi Akubi, I served in the same committee with him. He was there. Honorable Carlos Ahenkra was also there. Those of us who traveled. When we visited the ambassador at the embassy and his team, because usually when committees of Parliament travel this way, you have the opportunity to meet the ambassador or the high commissioners. I was shocked. In fact, we were all shocked that part of the statement made by the ambassador was that he was invited to attend a meeting on human rights. And he was shocked that he found, I think, about 17 civil society organizations and NGOs from Ghana who were present at that meeting and who all claimed to be promoters of LGBTQ and protecting the rights of LGBTQ people in Ghana.
NGOs.
And civil society organizations. And it was shocking to all of us. So, look, I have never said Ursula is a practitioner of LGBTQ. If I said it, I would have owned them. But you see, it reduced the import of the whole discussion of the bill and the LGBTQ thing. My position and the position of many of us have been consistent. We have always said that the LGBTQ business frowns upon one, our laws. I mean, the law says that natural carnal knowledge is a crime. Is that not a lawyer? Mm-hmm. 2, it frowns upon our cultural values. It frowns upon our religious practices. There has never been a consensus built by all faiths except on this anti-LGBTQ thing. Look, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Hindus, African traditional religion, tell me, every single religion, every single known acceptable religion in the world, there have been a consensus on our position against the LGBTQ thing. Now, the other issue that I think that ought to be raised has to do with why some people think that they can impose on us their way of life. That is one shocking. Mm-hmm. In the Western world, engaging in polygamous marriage is a crime. And if you engage in that, you could be prosecuted. It is a crime because they think it frowns upon their way of life, their values. What makes them think that they can impose their way of life on us? Because this one also frowns upon our values. The common law we have. The common law was not just a law that was created by the British.
Yeah.
It was laws that they made as a result of acceptable norms and values that they practice as a people. And that is why in the common law in Ghana, our laws also include acceptable values. There are certain aspects of our cultural practices that we all condemned. Chokosi is one thing that many people condemned in Ghana. And I think that our laws will even frown upon some of those things. But there are certain values, certain cultural values that we deem fit, that regulates the conduct and ensures decency in our societies, that are part and parcel of our laws in going forward. So at any point in time, laws are made to serve the interests of people. Now, I have heard people who say it is about human rights. Every single individual has a right. The one who even murders will claim to have a right. Why is it that when a person commits a crime, for example, a murder, that right to move and other things are truncated? They are truncated because that person has committed an act that is deemed to be injurious to the existence of society. So we also deemed that particular act to be injurious to the existence of our society. And I would conclude on this matter. I'm a Muslim, a practicing Muslim. If you look at the narration of Sodom and Gomorrah, the story in the Bible, there's no difference as we have it in the Quran. There's no difference. The narration of it in the Bible is virtually the same as it is narrated in the Quran. But the Quran goes further. Allah says in the Quran that when people engage in such acts, and mind you, the Sodom and Gomorrah was just gays. We now have lesbians, LGBTQ, queer people, certain things that are absolutely unreasonable. What the Quran says is that if anybody engages in this act in any society, and you refuse to fight it, that Allah's punishment will come in the form of birds carrying bait of flame. And each bird will be instructed by Allah to drop the bait of flame on every single individual in the society. It won't distinguish between those who practice it and those who do not practice it. The interpretation by ulamas on these Quranic verses is to tell you that you must fight this with all your strength. You must do everything possible to fight it. And let me make this point. The British have their way of life. The Americans have their way of life. Their way of life doesn't necessarily mean that we must also adopt it, because it frowns upon our existence and the way we relate with each other in our societies. When the Nazi Germans were advancing towards United Kingdom, and Churchill's security advisor, Halifax, advised him to surrender. You know what he said on the floor of the British Parliament? That even if we are lying on the floor of this Parliament, choking in our own blood, we shall not surrender. Our message is simple. Even if we are lying on the streets of Ghana, choking in our own blood and eating grass, as Honorable Murtala indicated, we must not and we ought not surrender to this, because it frowns upon our values, it frowns upon our culture, it frowns upon our religions, it frowns upon every aspect of our society. As a matter of fact, some few years ago, in those countries, these things were completely illegal. Some few years ago. Today, they think that they have advanced so much. And if you look at the constitution of many of these countries, you have their constitutions that are guided by the word of God, by the Bible. They use it. America says everything, they say God. So sometimes you wonder which God. And that God tells you in scripture, don't engage in this. Some people engage in it and there was punishment of God on them. They think that it must be engaged in. The pretense in this country is just legendary. And I've just indicated to you what we were told by an ambassador of this country, what he experienced. But you see, there are people who engage in it in academia. They push certain departments, threaten those departments of funding, that if you refuse to fight it, we will cut funding, from your department. This is completely blackmail. Blackmail in the name of something that they cherish and value, which we do not cherish and we do not value.
Wow.
The position on this bill, you are either for it or you are against it. In this country, the hypocrisy is just too much. Look, it is not just about religion. It is about our values, our culture. And that's why I ask,
no problem.
In this country, you are either a Christian or a Muslim, or a traditionalist, or a Jew, or a Buddhist, or a Zoroastrianist, or any other religion. Show me one single faith, whether you agree with that faith or not, or one single society in Africa, including Ghana, where you have an iota of acceptance of the LGBTQ. When I hear people talk about the law...
About the Anglican Church?
No,
even allowed
that is the Anglican, I'm saying in Ghana.
And that's England.
That is why the African Anglican Church are having problems with the Anglican Church in England. So, I mean, already...
Okay, when you say Ghana, so
in Africa, Ghana. Even in Africa. So I'm saying that...
But as an African country, it's allowed.
Well, I mean, if... South Africa, okay. So let's say Ghana. It's frowns upon our values. And when I hear people talk about law, human rights, who determines law that regulates the rights of people? Is it not societies? Yeah. I gave an example here, and people misconstrued that example. The Nuremberg trial. When people barbarously murdered people, the Nazi Germans, when they were hauled before the trial, you know what they said? They said what they were doing in Germany at that time was not a crime. It was acceptable by the Nazi law. Everybody knows that it was barbarous. So society, certain things, people can frown upon them in certain societies. In others, they do not. I am saying that every society, you make laws to regulate the conduct of everybody. And that conduct must be regulated in a manner that is generally accepted. And when I say generally, it doesn't mean that everybody must accept it. Is that not the case? We live in a society where all the religions and the faith we practice, the societies, the cultures, the communities, the ethnic groups we belong, all frown upon the LGBTQ in any form or shape. So if we say that people must not practice it, now if we want to stretch the argument that yes, we don't know what people do in their bedrooms, that is in their bedrooms. That is in their bedrooms. We saw billboards being sprung across the country, offices spaces being rented, and they began watching the cartoons. I had the pain to have watched a cartoon, so I have stopped certain cartoon networks for my kids.
Exactly.
They are doing that, targeting the subconsciousness of the kids. But you see, there is always who the cap fits. When we make certain statements, people get angry because perhaps they know the reasons. And that's why I agree with like people. Be bold. If you think that you are against it, against it. And that is why my position in Parliament was that it's not about Mr. Speaker saying, if you are against it, stand up. People won't stand up. But when you open the debate for all of us to be engaged, you begin to appreciate those who support it and those who do not. Because psychology will tell you, your unconscious mind is revealed through sleeps, through thinkings and wishes. So people in argument can. If you have a justification and you observe, all those who are promoting this, they will not come and say that we are promoting it. They try to argue on the angle of human rights, or it is the rights of people. The criminal walking out there also has a right. Why is it that when he commits crime, that right is truncated? It is crime because society thinks that it's a crime. In this country, pedophilia, or let's say trococy, or female genital mutilation. It is a cultural practices of certain people. But the laws in our country think that it is not acceptable. In some countries, it is. So when the law says that it is not acceptable, it doesn't mean that everybody in the country agrees with the law. But majority of the people agrees with the law. So we live in a society where majority of the people of this country says, we don't want to accept LGBTQ in any form or shape. Now people think that they must argue in defense of it in the so-called rights of people. Everybody has a right, but the right is truncated when you do something society deems unfit. So look, my position is consistent. You are either for the law or you are against the law. We must not accept this in any form or shape.